Season 4 of the hugely popular Netflix series about the British royal family has reportedly reached viewing figures of 29 million since it debuted on November the 15th. While the show's creator, Peter Morgan, has never denied taking artistic license with the drama of the royals and their private lives, some have raised concerns that The Crown conflates fiction with fact. The latest series of The Crown, which stars Olivia Colman as the Queen, covers the turbulent decade where Prince Charles married Lady Diana Spencer and the then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher created a free market revolution in British society. But some critics argue that the show is too much of a sensationalist depiction of royal and political life. The Culture Secretary has told the Mail on Sunday he intends to write to Netflix about his concerns, as the paper's royal editor explains from the palace throne room.
The campaign has really gathered steam. We've had people like Lady Angelaine Connor, confidant of Prince Charles. We've had a number of historians such as William Shawcross, Hugo Vickers, very eminent people who've studied royal history for a number of years. And of course, this last week we had the Culture Secretary, Oliver Dowden, who also supported the campaign to get these disclaimers at the start of every series, because he said that people shouldn't believe that this is real. First of all, Charles and Camilla's affair that lasted all the way before and all the way through Charles and Diana's courtship and their marriage, wrong. Charles and Camilla didn't pick up again, as it were, until 1985-86. The Queen and Margaret Thatcher's relationship is viewed as icy pretty much all the way through series 4. Wrong. The two women actually got on pretty well, apart from the Queen's worries about the lack of boycotting South African apartheid. And 3, when Philip is effectively shown threatening Princess Diana in Balmoral, and Diana says, "It's not a threat, sir," throwing forward to her conspiracy theories about her death in a car accident in Paris. Completely wrong. Prince Philip was incredibly supportive of Diana and her marriage problems with Prince Charles.
The 4th season portrays Britain at a low, as unemployment numbers soar and a war brews in the Falklands. It's a much more critical portrayal of the royal family compared with previous seasons, painting a picture of an out-of-touch monarch and the breakdown of the marriage of the Prince and Princess of Wales. In recent interviews, the leading actors have reminded audiences that the show is fictional rather than historical fact.
There's the wedding, there's the whatever in love means, there's all those kind of moments of that we can all kind of pluck from our memory, or that Emma and I will have researched. But actually, the majority of the season is pure creation and pure fiction.
I have no living memory of her. I think I was about 3 when she died. And for that, I'm quite grateful, because I think it meant that I sort of had a bit of a blank slate to start with. And also because, as Josh and I said, it's Peter's creation. It's his writing these characters, so it is already kind of removed from her.
TV critic Toby Earle says the series has never pretended to be anything other than a drama, but it shows the untouchable nature of the royal family slowly slipping away.
I think it's embarrassing that the Culture Secretary is reacting in this way. Boris Johnson often speaks about trusting in the great British common sense. I think if he believes in the great British common sense, he should understand that people understand the Crown's a drama. What happens behind closed doors, of course, is what adds to the mystique of the show. But it's interesting that no one's really kicked up such a fuss over the previous 3 series. It's only this series where the royals aren't perhaps portrayed in such a great light. You only have to watch Princess Diana's interviews after her marriage had broken down to get an idea of what it was that she went through. It is a work of fiction, but these were real events. And I think as these real events happen to real people, and of course, as we inch closer to where we are now, it does become the mystique of the royal family is ever more stripped away.
The Crown is a work of drama and storytelling, but with more episodes on the horizon, the appetite for Netflix's big-budget royal intrigue continues to grow.
And if I want to separate?
You will not separate or divorce or let the side down in any way. And if one day you expect to be king...
I do.
Then might I suggest you start to behave like one?
Well, Netflix, who make The Crown, of course, have not commented on the comments of the Culture Secretary. But we're going to ask you to comment, Victoria. This show has obviously really hit home. What's your view?
Hugely, and I think really we shouldn't underestimate the impact that it can have. You know, I work for an American publication, and the interest levels in America in these stories around these people are absolutely huge. And I think we're getting to this period in history now with this latest series, which is getting more and more recent, and also it's a period that a lot of people were very emotionally invested in the Diana story, and it's bringing back very real feelings about that period in the royal family's history. And we see the effects of it. We see that Clarence House has had to turn off responses on its Twitter feed because it was getting people responding, talking about Diana and saying critical things about Charles and Camilla. Now, that was not happening before this programme aired. So even though this is, people know it's fictional, or at least they should know it's fictional, but it's having a real impact on how these real individuals are perceived. It's done in a very, very realistic way, and it paints a very vivid picture of what people, I think, will think, well, that maybe that could have happened. And even if they know it's fictional, there's still the capacity for them to be very influenced by it.
Well, tell me about it. In my household, I've got my daughters aged 12 and 14 eagerly watching this and discovering all about really Princess Diana for the first time, and they're passionate about it. It's encouraged my elder daughter to watch Diana in Her Own Words, which is also on Netflix. And then they've got very strong views, and they've said things like, I can't believe that Prince Charles is so horrible and he'll never become king, and things like this. And you really are going to have another generation who will possibly, they won't want to accept Prince Charles as the king, I think.
It does feel quite on brand for 2020 madness for me that the government has got involved in this. Do you think they were right to say anything?
No, I really don't. I mean, come on, imagine when Boris Johnson was the columnist on the Telegraph, he would have been, you know, really taking the mickey out of this sort of thing. But, you know, government telling TV company to describe something as fiction or whatever. I mean, I think viewers are grown up enough to know, to form their own judgment about something being fictional.
But do you think the palace, someone's had a quiet word with someone in number 10 to say, oh, please say something?
Well, I think, you know, they've been very reluctant to comment themselves, the palace, but I think that they will probably welcome a lot of the coverage in the British media, which has very much been focused on how it's not accurate and people really coming forward and saying that. And I'm not sure we're seeing that level of criticism of it internationally, actually. So I wonder if maybe there's a bit of a difference in how it's being perceived in Britain, and people are brushing it off more as fiction, whereas actually is it internationally having more of an influence? I think the problem that the royal family have got is that even if they wanted to engage, which they don't seem to at all, they can't counteract this very vivid narrative with something else. You know, they can't say, this is fiction and here is the factual version of the conversation that was had 30 years ago, or the scenario that didn't happen. You know, they can't do that. They can't repaint a different picture. And I do think it's a problem because it's done with such attention to detail in terms of things like the fashion and the settings, and it's presented very realistically. And I do think, as I said, even if people then know it's fiction, the overarching narrative is based on fact, and it forms this picture in their mind that I think can be very difficult to shift and can affect how they perceive these real people.
Well, it seems like the major winner is Netflix, because we're all talking about it. It's ultimately all PR for the Crown, right?
Exactly, yeah. But it's, you know, on the one hand, they say, oh, it's not true. But then my daughter says, yeah, but have you seen Diana in Her Own Words? And there you have Diana in these recordings. And often the reality is far worse than is portrayed in The Crown. It really is.